All right, hello everyone, and welcome back from the lunch break. There's still some people in the lunch break. They will soon hopefully also come and join us, because we have a very exciting session for this afternoon, talking about maximizing the synergies for data spaces and, of course, trustworthy data economy at large. My name is Silla Sepp. I serve as the head of urban data ecosystems at the Finnish Center for Smart Cities in Estonia. And together with me, we have 5 excellent speakers who I think are the best one also to talk about data spaces and developments around that. So let's welcome them on stage. First of all, Manuel Mateo Goye from the Commission, the acting head of units for cloud and software. Ana Robles Garcia, the Secretary General for BDVA, Big Data Value Association. Chandra Chalagonda, the CEO of Fiverr Foundation. Ulrich Halle, the CEO of Gaia-X, who you know very well, and last but not least, Lars Nangov, the CEO of DSBA. Welcome on stage. All right, so I don't want to make too much an introduction, because we have limited time, and the important insights that we could get and distill from our excellent speakers is the most valuable part of this panel. But I want to start from the point that, of course, everybody here joining this event are already interested in data spaces, and we are working one way or another on fostering data use and sharing in certain contexts. So for the first question to you, I'd like to just hear, what is your contributions to data spaces? What is your particular focus to data spaces, and perhaps also motivations for this discussion? Maybe we could start from Ulrich.
Yeah, thank you, Silla. And why are we doing this? I hope it became clear during these 2 days that data spaces really have a potential to increase the efficiency of the processes of end users, be it end users in manufacturing industry, be it in energy, be it in healthcare, be it in agriculture, so the different domains which we as ecosystem are addressing together. And our contribution as Gaia-X, and I hope also this becomes clear that not one single organization is able to provide all the different functionalities, the building blocks which are required, and our contribution is really to provide the trust framework, so one of the basics to enable trustful digital ecosystems. And this is the core of the activities and the contributions of Gaia-X, providing to interoperable data spaces. And we also saw it today that we are not only talking about data spaces in Europe, because a lot of end users, excuse me, a lot of end users are addressing global markets, have global supply chains, have global networks, and therefore these solutions we are creating here together need to be accepted and adopted on a global scale. And to be able to create trust on a global scale, it is necessary to respect the legislations and the regulations in the different regions. We are quite harmonized within Europe, so that's fine. But a lot of regulations we have here in Europe does not work outside of Europe. And we saw a nice example from Professor Noboru Koshizuka from Japan, but we have similar activities in Korea, for example, and in other regions. And this is something where, as Gaia-X, we are providing a frame which has been filled by the policies and rules which are relevant for Europe in the actual compliance document which we published 2 months ago, and offering this frame also to other regions to fill it in according to their requirements, still working on the interoperability. of these different models. And this is the contribution of Gaia-X to the creation of interoperable data spaces.
Thank you. Let's move to Lars.
Yeah, so what is our contribution? Our contribution is that we have started that great trip on data spaces like 9 years ago, coined the term and worked on the fundamentals. What is that data space thing? And on that path, we started with a, first idea why we need data spaces. So it felt like, okay, we need them. I think in the last years, and especially in the last 2-3 years, we have seen how important data spaces are. And that is what I would like to state here. From the very beginning, we said, like, data spaces are about connecting every imaginable data endpoint in the world so that we can make that data, the largest amount of data possible, available for data economy. What is data economy? Well, all the great things, all the value creation that we want to have by sharing data, combining data sets, getting insights, creating new services, new business models, whatever, and at the end also making things like AI happen. And in that current discussion on AI, well, you cannot make AI happen without having access to much, much more data. Most of the data is not shared. So we need data spaces. And I think that is the insight all over the world currently. We have seen how much data space idea is embraced in other economic areas. In Europe, things have started, and I think we are very, very advanced here. And now we need to see that we really work on global standards. That is why IDSA is International Data Spaces Association. And we need to see that this works all around the world, because data sharing does not stop at borders, and value creation is a global thing. What do we do there? So our contribution to that picture, and data spaces is an ecosystem game. We cannot do that on our own. So therefore we have all these great fruitful collaborations with the organizations here on stage and others. We take care of the very idea of data sharing. How does that work? And at the center is like, okay, I have a data provider and a data consumer. They need to share data somehow. So the idea of this data space connector, this has been born in IDSA. And now we need to explain, like, okay, how does such a thing, a data space connector, or a participant agent, how it's called somewhere else, how does that interact with all the other services? So we need to talk about the fundamental characteristics for data spaces. This is the one thing, so the IDSA rulebook for data spaces, which will become an ISO standard very soon. It's on the way, ISO 21451. So about the very fundamental, more functional perspective, design characteristics for data spaces. And then on the bottom, on the opposite side, okay, how to make that happen, that you can really share data globally. And therefore we can be really, really proud and confident to say, like, what we are doing with data spaces is a new era like the internet. Because the internet is sharing of, like, open data websites. Now we are talking about the data that has really a value. So you cannot share data via the internet that has value. Most of the data is not shared. So how can we overcome that? And we need a new protocol on the internet to make that happen, that deals with new functionalities. This is the data space protocol. And these two ends of this of the things to do in data spaces, data space protocol and the fundamental design characteristics, that is what IDSA brings in a very international, business-oriented perspective.
Thank you. Chandra.
Yeah, thanks. All right. So Fiverr Foundation started with providing the components for creating the smart platforms and various data platforms, actually. And right now, I'm proud to say that we have 600 platforms out there using Fiverr technologies, a very vibrant community on it. So the contribution side, when we have a responsibility, definitely, that how we evolve these platforms into data spaces, how to evolve them so that they participate into data space. And together with IDSA, Gaia-X, and BDVA, we are working on creating the trust layer, integrating a trust layer, following the IDSA rule book and using a data space protocol to create the connector so that our platform users can have an evolution into the data space. Apart from that, we are also contributing a lot on the data value creation, data provenance, and data interoperability. So because when we are talking about the data space, when we are talking about the global data exchanges, these are the main concerns which actually everyone is asking. Unless we clearly agree, unless we are also working heavily on data value creation, because this is very important for a private sector, and also the sustainability of the data spaces further. Then we actually come back to various types of data. So there are many different types of data, there are many different sectors. Some of the sectors also have the personal data. Some of the sectors also need health data. So how do we basically align the data exchange in this? So this is what at the data layer we are working on. We are using a lot of Gaia-X based trust framework. We are using data space protocol. We are aligning with that, and we are also providing a concrete, very pragmatic architecture from 5-year foundation side, that how a platform, how a brownfield platform or a greenfield platform can use this minimal set of effort and join the data space, or maybe they can evolve into a data space by themselves. And this is exactly on the area where we are trying to address the issues. There is a lot of work being done on this. There is a 5-year data space connector which follows Gaia-X trust framework. We are trying to align also that at this stage, I would say that not 100% with the data space protocol, but we are trying to get there. At least my team said that it's 90% aligned. So also working together with IDSA on the various standardization bodies to standardize this and make it very concrete and make it available to everyone and also have a fair solution. Because in the end of the day, the community has to pick it up, maintain these components, and you start using these components. And this is the key contribution we are looking forward for.
Great.
Thank you.
Anna, please.
Thank you, Sile, and thank you also, Ulrich. I take the opportunity to thank you for having me here and the whole Gaia team. So BDBA, Big Data Value Association, so I will start by joining my colleagues on the data value creation, and everybody knows that for us it's a key topic. Also, I was so happy that during at least many of the talks that I could listen to today, value creation is at the center. So our focus actually is at that level, value creation and connection with artificial intelligence. And I will explain now how this links with our old history. That's one dimension. Another dimension that also makes us a bit different from our colleagues, we really come from the research and innovation. So we are industry driven, but we are research and innovation. So we manage a lot of projects that actually need to come into the market into 3 years. So let's say, what is the innovation agenda for the future of data spaces? How are we going to integrate, for instance, generative AI for data knowledge management, or how we are going to use it for semantic interoperability? These kind of things that many of you are now experimenting, how are we taking this to the future? So now allow me to be a bit maybe more concrete. And that goes to the motivation. So BDBA has been working already, I think, for 10 years. We had our 10th anniversary this year in the whole aspect of data economy and how really build innovation in the data economy, in particular with this aspect of data value. So everything that has been developed for many years, we don't do a specifications, but our members develop a lot of projects, and based on that, we develop joint frameworks. And everything that we have done from data management, data integration, data protection, AI, everything that we have done for years, now it comes to the decentralized, federated. So the whole data value chain now, it comes thanks to the colleagues here, to this decentralized, and thank you to you all, we are building really this not in platforms, but in decentralized ecosystems. So for us, now the value, we are contributing a lot, for instance, under the scope of the Data Spaces Support Center to the value creation part, and in particular to the value creation services. And our contribution is how all those services, data enrichment services, AI services, connection to computing infrastructure, etc., can be integrated with data spaces. On that, for instance, BDBA is a private member of the Euro-HPC joint undertaking, and maybe this connects a bit more with you if you are into the AI topic, with the whole launch by the European Commission of the AI factories. So now is the moment to connect computing infrastructures, or what we call the computing ecosystem, with the data ecosystem to make AI happen. So that's in this interplay where we are actually working a lot. Another important contribution is also really bringing small players into the data economy and data sharing. We've been working for years with our hubs that are called AI spaces on having real infrastructure for them to come to experiment and really to evaluate what is the value of data sharing, what is the motivation of you sharing with me and creating something together. That has been done for many years, and now this is crystallizing in the current data spaces and decentralized ecosystems. And as I said, very much interested in how all the investments in research will move into all the very great deployments that many of you are taking into the market at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sila. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Of course, the answer from the side of the Commission is necessarily a bit different. First, because we do something that others can, which is the legal basis that underpins everything that data spaces are nowadays doing. And having listened to most of the panels over the last 48 hours, I'm quite glad that the aspect of the legal basis seems to be now there and well anchored, and I've heard a couple of people speaking about compliance with the AI Act and things like this, but I'm glad to see that what was missing really 5 years ago when this adventure started on the side of the Commission is now mostly behind us. And the mostly is because the work is not fully done in enforcing existing legislation. My colleagues from our sister unit working on this are still working on the Innovation Board to enforce quite a bit of the Data Act. And another part of the Data Act, Lars was speaking a moment ago about standards, is this idea of a repository for cloud services in the broad sense, something that we plan to have in place at some point in 2025, and which will allow the industry to, of course, have this repository, which in itself is has value, but as well to have an alternative to the traditional harmonized standardization track, which is typically time-consuming and not always suitable for some fast-paced moving elements, and to having this repository as recognized industry originated standards, even if the word is not the right one. There are a number of new legislation coming up, maybe not precisely about data spaces, but that will affect the cloud environment. Piers will say a word about it in his closing remarks. So I will not go very much into it now. But maybe obviously the other part next to legal and enforcement is the funding aspect. I'm not going to retell you here the hundreds of millions that we've spent in different sectoral data spaces, but I believe they're very much making a difference today. There's a new round of such financing coming up I think member states should agree on the next round of the digital work program towards the end of the year, early next year. So more is coming. But maybe as well a warning, because it has still been a little bit out of the sphere of public discussion, is that the current financial cycle is coming to an end of 27. With this work program covering the full 25, 6, and 7. And this is a bit our horizon of visibility at this stage. And the next cycle, the next full 7 years of cycle, still remains completely to be developed. And the Commission should make a proposal by summer of next year. At that stage, it's still very high level, but then it from there follow the different programs. The next Horizon Europe, the next DEP, the next CEF, and all the acronyms you've ever dreamt of, or their recombination. It's not because a program existed in the past that it will continue existing. And I think this is something that all in the room should have in mind, that the headlines, the topics, the programs, the way everything is conceived might be, and this is because I don't have a crystal ball, might be about to change from, from 28 onwards technically, but with everything coming up before. And if I'm saying this, is because there's a new political gang in Brussels. The college should be approved hopefully in the coming days. We have a new parliament with a lot of new faces, and I think there's a collective effort. Of course, me and my team inside the Commission, we don't need to be retrained and re-explained what this is all about. But there's a lot of, and we will do our part in explaining this to all the newcomers. But I think definitely for parliamentaries, for MEPs, there is definitely a groundwork to be done by everyone in its constituencies. And in due course as well, at least for the large associations, to be well introduced with the new college commissioner and their respective cabinets. Maybe a final word on the funding, because we've been supporting sectoral data spaces. This morning, Ilya did a great job at presenting Simpl, and how that supports all the data centers, and hopefully taking on board Gaia-X and the rest of my colleagues' elements into a turnkey solution for data spaces. But there's one buzzword that I've been hearing for the last 48 hours, is the elements of artificial intelligence. And how much yesterday the panel on data spaces was very clearly all at that in their roadmap. This is in the roadmap as well of Simpl, on how to bring those tools into, through Simpl for data spaces. And maybe one thing which is a bit missing as a homework for us is the dimension of public sector data spaces. A lot of the examples we've been hearing are about the private sector. It's great, it's fantastic, we need more of that. But in addition, I think we should make a lot more effort in bringing all those wonders to the public sector. With Simpl, we intend to do that through a different name, but the concept is not drastically different. It's called Eurocloud. It's about interconnecting public sector infrastructures to one another, with or without data, but at least the infrastructure. And I think there's a lot more to be done there. It's usual that the public sector is always lagging a bit behind adoption than the private sector. But so this is a pending assignment for us in the years to come.
Thank you. A lot has been already said, so I'll mix it up a little bit for the continuing discussion. But what stands out to me is that obviously things take time, and it's an evolution, it's a journey, and it's a question in this evolution that how do we bring on the past and leave certain things in the past? And the other part is that, like, how do you also time things, and how do you live up certain type of periods while things take time? A bit of an abstract thought, but I find that this is timing and this kind of context and understanding this as a longer journey is important. And hopefully we can also discuss this now in the continuing discussion about the future for data spaces. I want to go back to Anna, actually, because you mentioned really the diversity and the variety of stakeholders that you work within the BDVA, as well as then one of your roles in the Data Spaces Support Center is actually to work with a network of stakeholders. And that is not just different kind of stakeholders. It means right away also that they have very different contexts and very different, let's say, trajectories of how to move. So my question to you is that what do you see, what progress we've actually had to create the shared understanding about data spaces, the complementarity between the different initiatives, the different organizations in terms of organizations, and what stands out? Because even Manuel mentioned that, like, now with newcomers coming in, whether it would be in the Commission or elsewhere, new SMEs coming in, the work continues in creating that shared understanding and the motivation for data spaces. So what stands out for you?
Thank you, Sile. Not an easy question to answer very quickly. And yes, definitely, and we are all here involved in the Data Spaces Support Center, so we need to deal with a large variety of stakeholders. So I will classify your question in a bit the different stakeholders. So what I see, we collaborate with a lot of data space initiatives, in particular the ones somehow under the Digital Europe program, but with many others as well. And there is progress, definitely, and I think on that DSSC has done a very good job in integrating input from all associations, from many other sources in a very neutral manner, and build the basics. That, of course, is work in progress, so this is evolving, but work on the basics. And on that, I think it has been done a very good job, and because we see more and more data spaces taking that as a reference. Not only, I can put a good example, for instance, with the language data space, because maybe I know it a bit more. They come from previous infrastructures, but they have followed completely what DSSC and DSBA actually both in parallel things have done, and adapted and followed, and now you can see when they present it how they really follow the framework of DSSC. This is an example. But of course there are different data spaces in different maturity levels. We know, for instance, with the ones that we are now working with, for instance, in healthcare, they come from also previous infrastructures. So, you know, the gap is a bit wider, but we are working in making that gap smaller, and we are progressing. And then something where I see a lot of progress is new emerging data spaces. Start really looking at the framework, so the blueprint, the conceptual model that the DSSC has put in place, and use that as a reference. So for me, that's already signs that we are moving in the right direction, okay? Of course, a lot of work is needed, and maybe I jump to another group. There are many, but we collaborate with many other initiatives that are not data spaces, also with the objective of making sure that we connect with infrastructures, computing infrastructures, with AI platforms, with all kind of different initiatives that are at the European and global level, but focus now on the European. And that, of course, the level of understanding comes when there is a need. So we have been trying explaining data spaces. I put the example of HPC because already for 2-3 years, but there was no need. So then once there is the need, then the understanding comes, and the good thing is now we have a joint framework, a joint understanding, a joint kind of basics, I think, and that's going to help a lot that these other initiatives at that when they start getting the interest, that they are up to speed. So that's what I think I can say in terms of how, so a lot of work is needed, and also within from our associations, DSSC, with a lot of evangelization of data spaces, of data economy, of the value of data sharing, and that we need to multiply for 10. And we need to make sure that SMEs, companies, all kind of public sector that embrace more and more. So it's a huge amount of work still, but it's going in a very good direction, I would say.
Good, and good luck also in continuing that work. But you allude to the point about seeing the need, and many of you actually pointed out to the moment in time where we see a lot of the attention to AI, and obviously AI needs access to data. Even our new vice president for tech sovereignty and security and sovereign, the democracy is the last one, mentioned that the intention is to make Europe as an AI continent. That is a very clear strategy for this. At the same time, there are organizations who see data sharing as an asset, others see this as too big of a risk. So I want to turn to Lars, because you also work with all kinds of organizations, all kinds of data space initiatives, many of them actually driven by commercial actors. What can we learn from that? How can actually data spaces change that perception that it's primarily a risk to share data to actually see this as an asset and really enable those new contexts?
It's interesting to have to answer that question still. So I'm answering that question since over 9 years now, to how to find the balance between the insight that sharing data gives value and the dare to share data. So we're still obviously on a mission, and we need arguments. And I think what has been talked about is argumentation on 2 levels. So on the one hand side, we need to have like immediate value, and especially companies want to have immediate value. Well, with a transformational shift that data spaces are, you do not necessarily have immediate value. That is a problem. What we are here doing is really a paradigm shift of data economies. So we invent something like the internet again. And what we see is we can compare that very, very well with what happened in the first phase of the internet. So there was not one internet. So actually for a very long time there was not one internet. And I think at the end also France had its own internet. And so we now see a lot of islands that already work like the internet, following the same design principles, but are still like isolated islands. And then a lot of good things happened on the internet, so that now we have one. And this is also the analogy that we should have and keep in mind in data spaces. We can, on the one hand side, already gain value with smaller islands, but we may not forget to build the bigger one. And that is the discussion that we have. So we need to go for global standards, for example, for these protocols. So the HTTP made finally a lot of isolated networks, the internet, and we are working all together on these elements currently. And yeah, well, companies need to create value in the smaller systems, but not forget the bigger ones. And so the smaller ones, in the DSSC, we have defined 5 rationals why data spaces make sense. So it's to cope with regulation. That's always easy, but not the very sexy thing. Then you can share burdens because you collaborate. But at the end, it's about innovation. And that is the next step where we need to go for. And that is where the bigger storyline comes in, also with AI. That we really see new products, new services that you could not imagine today because most of the data is not shared. So I learned a very nice new term from Gartner, which is the dark data. So 80% of the data in companies is not shared. It's not even able to be shared because they cannot. So there's a massive potential to lever, and this is the next thing to go. So explain how the business rationale works in these isolated islands, but the big leap will come when we bring them together with the converged framework that we are talking about, and that needs to happen on the international level.
Thank you.
And that is so, I think you asked about the companies, sorry for that one more sentence. We see more and more companies that see the business and that smell that they can do something and that they can build new services, and therefore they get or make their hands dirty in current building of software and services. And at the end, we need those in place. So Simpl is there. In IDSA, we call it the focus campaign for data space software and services, where we collaborate with some of our members, so those companies who can ship the data space technology. That needs to be in place. So we all have a PC at home, or now we have a mobile phone with which you can access the internet. And everyone needs to have an agent at home to access data spaces. And then data sharing starts and makes fun.
Good that you bring it out, and it's a bit of a curveball, the comment that I will make, but in the last 2 days there's been a lot of talk about we need to think about business models, but that is not a new recommendation or a new suggestion. This is something that, Anna, you mentioned also that you work with your organizations in BDBA about value creation for many years already. So I'm really trying to also understand throughout the 2 days about what are the challenges that we still leave that a little bit in the behind, or why it's so challenging. So if anybody also have some guidance or answers to that, to bring it a little bit more, like dive deeper in this context, that will help a lot. But for now, because also we know don't have too much time left, I want to also go back to Ulrich, because you with Gaia work globally, and you work with different kinds of governments. And I want to understand what are the particular needs, hopes, ambitions from governmental actors towards data spaces. And when reflecting back on this moment today, how are we actually serving them and their needs?
Yeah, we have a team. It is called the Governmental Advisory Board, which is advising, as it is in its name, our board of directors, bringing strategic advices, but also bringing requirements from the different countries. In this case, European countries and governments. We have 16 countries represented there, plus the European Commission. And it is clear that the requirements are there. How can data spaces help to improve the productivity, the efficiency of organizations within the countries? That can be commercial companies, it can be public administrations, that can be farmers. Yeah? And coming back to your question of business models, I think this became clear during these 2 days that we more and more have the building blocks in place to create data spaces. Not that far as 5R, for example, is, where you can be guided through a dialogue and your digital platform is deployed automatically. We are not there yet. Yeah? We still need to spend some effort to create new data spaces, but where we don't have really yet the clear models is how to sustainably operate it. And here, what was discussed with the orchestrators, we should not leave this task to every single data space to develop their ideal business model. We should join forces, that's my view, to support them to develop some business model patterns, a catalog of possible business models where they can choose and where they can build upon and don't need to develop everything from scratch. I think this is one of the main tasks for the next 12 to 18 months to come, and this is clearly also a requirement from the different member states. And there is a lot of investment, Manuel mentioned it, into the development of data spaces, not only by the Commission, but also on member state level, and this investment needs to be secured.
Very good. Now, Chandra, as part of the data spaces developments, there's obviously different layers. One is the regulatory part, how do we comply? There's the technical part, there are the business models. But in one of our conversations, also you emphasized that data spaces rely on also very good governance. And this is actually an area that needs more attention. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and maybe even bring some examples of why this is so important?
Yeah, and first of all, I have a technical background, so whenever I say about this one, it sounds really funny because I would like to say that every problem can be solved in the world by technology. But in this particular case, when I put it into the numbers on the percentage, the technology part in the data spaces is only maybe 20 to 30% of it. The technology standards, and I think the major part of this is about governance. How the governance is establishing the rules of data interoperability, how they are actually governing, creating the rules about how to exchange different types of data, so private, like privacy data, health data, all this, unless this is really made rules by the governance of the data space, will be very difficult for technical people to actually implement this data space. When it also comes to the business models, this is also a governance aspect on it because, say, just an example. I give you an example. So there is an AI model company which is basically also participating in the data space, and there is a company or there is a platform which has massive amounts of data, a closed data. They don't want to share that with everything. A lot of personalized data, a lot of health data, but this particular AI model. The platform which runs and which provides the services about the AI model would like to have that data because the more the data the AI models get, the more diverse data they are trained with, then more non-biased they become. So they become very, very objective in their decisions on it, so, or the guidance which they give. So these two platforms can come together, use the business model which is defined there. What Ulrich has been mentioned, we need to decide on the different business models, and the governance needs to allow this so that, okay, I give my data to you, I give this data from the platform, but this AI model also uses this data and also gives back me the result. This is beneficial for both of them. It's already a clear business model there. On the governance aspect, this part of this thing is that what type of data models are out, what type of data exchange which happens. End of the day, why are we doing the data space? To exchange the data, allow each others to use the service and expand the market reach for different platforms across globe. So, and if the governance is not able to standardize this exchange of data, standardize the way this data is exchanged and the ontologies and the vocabularies, then it is going to be again the same situation where the platform of this one can go back and again get in touch with them manually and say that, look, we both are, by the way, part of these data spaces, but can we agree on how we exchange the data? So there should be a standardization on that side, and it is the responsibility of the governance of the data space to handle it. Again, the data space governance also should take responsibility of sustaining the data space and how to operate it, both on the operational level, on the technology level. Because technology keeps evolving. We create a data space now, 5 years down the line, the whole purpose of the data space might be different, that particular. So on 5-year side, we are actually trying to get the members and the parties who are involved in creating various data spaces and various ecosystems, like all from Prometheus X and all, they are joining us, especially Visions, they joined us, and we are learning from them that how do we basically work on this kind of a particular sector of education sector, and then what type of governance model is being used there. And at the same time, we are also using DSSC and our DSBA platform to align with each other and learn from even outside of our ecosystems. And I think that is the where we need to understand, and that is what also the governance at every layer we are also focusing on. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you. Last but not least, before we need to start actually closing the session, I want to go back to Manuel. And we had many sessions actually on the topic, and slightly alluded to also here in the discussion about globalization. And that first of all, we need to make sure that data moves internationally, that we collaborate internationally. But at the same time, there's also all of those different kinds of initiatives around data spaces already, somewhat that follow and work already as in Europe. Others approach it slightly different in developing those kind of data spaces or data ecosystems, however we would call them. Now, at the same time, there is this aim from European, let's say, policies and strategies to, of course, also ensure that we work towards sovereignty, security, all of that. But what I also find is really important is that when we think about sovereignty and security, at the same time, it's also actually empowering European actors to become stronger and cooperate, that actually enable those types of interactions in value chains and other contexts, so that actually sovereignty and security comes from being strong in a way. So how would you approach this? How can we really promote the core principles, values that we have here in Europe when we work internationally, while also actually staying open and respectful about other approaches in the world?
The good old question about the soft power of Europe in exporting its values and norms through its single market and its and being the biggest economy in the world. So let me now be a bit more specific about what we're working. I think, or at least I'm happy to be proven wrong, and in particular from our international visitors. But as much as I see, I think that Europe, in this question of data spaces and exchanging data within ecosystems, is by far leading other economies in the world. And I think, and it's a colleague and friend, economist, whispering to me, he said, it's only logical because of the fabric of our economy, which is mainly about SMEs and mainly about them working together in industrial ecosystems. It's no surprise as a consequence that the ones where internationally this has peaked the most is rather in Asia than in the US, because if we look at the economic fabric of those economies, they're closer to us than the US, where the logic is different, where companies are much bigger, where their single market comes as a given, while here you need to build from scratch. And I'm very grateful to Ulrich and his colleagues and everyone on all this effort to bring to evangelize and to bring all the good things that we're doing in Europe, because it's not because we're a large economy based on many SMEs that we're a closed economy. To the contrary, our supply chains are integrated and our trade is fundamental to Europe. And we cannot develop data spaces in isolation of the rest. So I think this is great. It needs to be done more. And so, yeah, Ulrich, Gaia-X, but as well the old DSSC, or at least its members, is very active in this world. If you give me an extra minute, I think conferences are like holidays. You shouldn't finish one without planning the following one, especially when it was a success like those 2 last days. And if you don't mind passing the next slide, there's a QR code where you can start, as of today, signing up for the Simpl annual event, the first one, since this is still a brand new initiative, to call it like this. What I can promise you is at least 4 things. First, the first demo of the platform. a roadmap of how we're going to evolve it along 25 and 26. Use cases on how we will support its deployment in a specific situation for specific data spaces. And then fun, because Brussels, Auto World, waffles, beers and chocolates is always fun. So that's the last promise for that one.
Thanks a lot. And it's actually a good segue to our maybe last round of remarks before we close the session, thinking about the future. Maybe not so much about the even upcoming months, but expanding this to a bigger or longer horizon, to maybe 5 to 10 years. What is your vision actually for data spaces? Where are we in 5 to 10 years with that? And I know because Anna needs to leave quite shortly, I'll start with Anna.
Yeah, and I already apologize if I run after my intervention, but I really have a flight. I'm very tired. Thank you for taking me first. And thank you for the question and a bit of a wrap-up, how I see in 5, 10 years. And with that, I mirror what Lars was saying of being a commodity. And Lars and I, we say a lot, or I say to him, the day we will stop talking about data spaces is when it will be successful, because we'll be part already. It's really a means for something else. That is really to have a meaningful data economy, businesses, better public services, etc. So that clearly for me, I see in 5, 10 years that all the data spaces that are being set up by many of you, by many of us, really are part of the same ecosystem, that is all the synergies, the interoperability really exists, that we simplify the entry point to all the companies. So it's really this plug and play, so to speak. No, that's one. And the second one is this vision of connection with value creation with AI. Sustainability is key. Thank you. And we should focus on the sustainability aspect of the data spaces. And based on that, also, I'm very happy with Simpl will help us to focus on value creation, and also will connect us with the AI platforms a lot. So that's part of this future. So the more we have this data sharing, we give this data sharing value for artificial intelligence, now that there is a big focus on building this AI continent. I think that's what I see in 5, 10 years, that we really, these platforms really bring this data shared for AI in the sovereign manner that we want to do. With this, just a call for action for everyone. From DSSC, we released a paper on data spaces and generative AI. For those of you interested in that topic, we are very happy to collaborate, in particular with companies in this context. So, and thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And before we let Anna go, let's have a round of applause also to Anna, specifically for all the work done. Thank you, Anna. Let's move to Chandra. What is your vision to the future about data spaces?
So I'll like to reiterate, as we're running out of time, I will stress very close, is sustainability. And I would like to see 5 years down the line, a private sector playing and participating in the data spaces. And unless the private sector takes almost 80% usage of data spaces and participating in the data spaces, then the sustainability of the data spaces has to be on the government side, funding side. So the clear example, what I just mentioned in my previous, the AI model is just using the data is exchanged, used to train the model becomes robust and trained with the diverse and can address the diverse demography. Then the same company which also having a data also can use the AI model for their purposes. So it's clearly one of the example of the business, but the more business models needs to be found out, and I think next 5 to 10 years is going to be a data value creation on that most of the time. And then unless we have a data value creation and the business models nailed down, the sustainability of the data spaces is also going to be challenged. I think next 5 to 10 years is going to be on this. And I hope that we create a clear business value proposition for private sectors and SMEs and startups to join these data spaces so that they can join and they can make a benefit out of it and increase their market reach.
Thank you. Lars, your few points.
Yeah, well, I made my vision in my statement before, so landing on that again, we should make data spaces the big ambition that it is, and not stop being happy with smaller things. So a lot of the data spaces that we see today are I would say, not really data spaces. They are platforms, they are marketplaces, they are something in between. When we talk about the internet analogy that I just mentioned, that is what data spaces should be. So they can have the shape of a marketplace, they can have a platform, but most they are a multi-cloud, multi-platform thing. Connect all of these. So you go in the internet, you go in the web, and then you go to a marketplace. You go to an Amazon, you can do something. You go on Etsy, you can do something else, but under different governance. So we may not confuse data spaces with the adventure that you can have in these data spaces. And then in the browser, you can also play online games or type documents. So this is what we need to do, and it all works seamlessly. And therefore, my vision for in 10 years is that first we do not see the data spaces. You just travel, and it is no problem to move from one data space entity to the other one. You do not see that. It's just natural. You can share data with the mobility thing today, and then in the next second you do something with your health, and in the third second you do something else. That needs to be the ultimate goal.
Thank you. Ulrich?
Yeah, in 5 to 10 years, interoperable data spaces will be a natural business enabler like data platforms are today, but much more efficient.
Thank you for the concise answer also on this. And Manuel, last but not least.
I thought I was concluding last time, so maybe just a reflection on what Lars was saying. There's I now forgot the name of the guy who coined this 30 years ago about Internet of Things and saying technology becomes really magic when you don't see it anymore. And I think that's exactly, I very much agree with you, is the day we will have the data spaces, but without calling them by their little name anymore, that we will have really succeeded. So, way to go.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for these insights and this discussion. What I take from this, of course, is that it's a longer journey. It's really, really important that we have this bigger vision in mind where we actually go for, because whenever we work with different kind of use cases, the bigger picture needs to be in front of us so that we don't work on these only in siloed manners, in fragmented manners. And of course, that it means actually that the underlying building blocks that happen behind the curtains need to function together, but in the end we actually need to empower the users, whether it would be organizations or individuals, who actually use those tools that are created from that and create that pull for these data spaces. So let's continue working on that. This is a journey. It's a complementary journey from all of those initiatives and organizations that are part of this community. So let's continue our work here. Thanks a lot to our panelists.